Welcome to week 2. We have a collaborate on Monday night for assignment number 1, which is fast coming up. We're just following actors, origins and sources of conflict. So as you read on, some people have had a bit of confusion about the difference between origins and sources. I look at origins really as historical. Was there an event that triggered the conflict? Try and have a boundary around your conflict. Some countries seem to have endless conflicts. So if that's the case, perhaps pick one that might have a certain time frame associated with it, or specific actors, rather than trying to act like 3 or 4 different kind of conflicts that have been going on for 20 years are one. For example, if you're in that country or you were living in a certain region, what would be the conflict? So it's unlikely that, a conflict in the north of the country and the south of the country and the west are all going to affect you. So, pick one. That's easier to do in some cases than others. But you also have some choices for your assignments as well, a series of conflicts you can pick from that will help you contain it. I'm only talking about that because I know in the case of Nigeria, for example, there's resource wars, there's religious wars, there's Boko Haram, there's a lot of different sorts of issues. So you want to limit it because when we're talking 1,500 words, it's not very long. So the actors are usually pretty clear. Again, try to be selective. You might find that when you drill down, there's a lot of actors, but you might try to find a way to classify them. Politicians obviously can often be actors, or governments, might be a certain rebel group, might be ethnic groups. Again, it depends on your conflict. So just try and bear that word limit in mind. And your sources, that's in module 3.2, things like territory, ethnic, religious, those type of things. So all the best with that. I hope you can come along to Collaborate A1. So this week we also looked at models. So that helps when it comes to the origins of conflict. How on the international scale do we call something conflict, or do we call something a war? So that's where we use things like correlates of war and also the Uppsala data project to try and establish, yes, this indeed is what classifies as a conflict of such a scale to draw international attention and research attention to it as a conflict. So it's not trying to undermine that other things might be conflicts, but it's just simply a form of measurement and classification. That's how we live in the world, I suppose, and certainly in the research world, classification and measurement all count for something until someone comes up with newer measures. These, at the present, are some of our best measures of conflict and war. But then the greed and grievance model, as a lot of you have pointed out this week, it gives you a lot more scope to actually start to explain and get into the sources of conflict. Is it just money? Is it resources? Is it greed? And really, the issue at the end of it doesn't, at the bottom of it doesn't matter. Or is it grievance? So typically ethnic and religious conflicts go into this. So you probably want to use a couple of scales, to be honest, if you want to do a really good case study. So when you're looking at the origins, you might look at establishing it as a conflict or a war using one of those first 2 models. And then you might actually argue for greed or grievance when you're getting into the sources. So that will be a good way to approach it. I'm just thinking from the top of my head there, but that's just an idea of how you could start to incorporate some of the course material. So my only other advice is please do incorporate some of the course material. Just keep up with the modules and the weekly learning materials. I've been really happy with your engagement on discussion threads. Please keep it up, and I look forward to working with you in an ongoing way. Thanks, everybody.